can't just say whatever is on your mind. You can't just think that being who you are and being natural and being your normal self is going to get you very far. You have to be careful in this world. You may not like it, but it's the reality. You have to understand some of these basic principles so that you don't go around making these painful mistakes.
As Rachel suggested, we took some questions from different members in our group and some people that were aware that Robert was going to be here tonight. So Rachel asked the first question of Robert. Hopefully they're compelling to you. I know they're going to be compelling to me, so maybe I'm being selfish. But
All right, first question. All right, can you share the inspiration behind writing The 48 Laws of Power?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, so if you don't mind, I'll try and go into it, and I'll be as short as possible. But basically, begins here in Los Angeles. I'm not going to start from the day I was born, so don't worry. But I come from a very middle-class background. My father was a salesman. He was a salesman for 40 years, worked for the same company his whole life, a very gentle man, a great salesman. And so we were very middle class, had a very comfortable life, not rich or anything, but very comfortable. And then I went to university, and I studied perhaps the most irrelevant subject that anybody could possibly study: classics, ancient Greek and Latin, because that was my interest, right? So I emerged from university, and you can imagine I'm pretty sheltered and I'm pretty naive, right? So I decided to enter the work world, and I wanted to be a writer, and I also had to make a living, so I entered journalism. And I kind of bring my naivete, my idealism, my weird ideas into the work world. And I'm rather shocked. It was like, what's going on here? People have all these egos, they're politicking, they're playing all sorts of office games. I had this idea that all that mattered was writing great pieces, was the work that you did, the hours that you put in. No, it was about playing up to people's egos and flattering them and not making other people feel insecure. And I'm going, well, this isn't what I expected. So I decided I don't really like working for other people, right? I don't like all that stuff. So I go and I wander around Europe, working in hotels, teaching English, doing construction work, anything where I didn't have a boss, because I hated having bosses, trying to write novels, and I wasn't getting really very far. My father got ill, so I came back to Los Angeles and decided, well, I'm going to try my hand at Hollywood. You know, still being naive, thinking I could make my way in Hollywood. And I like to sort of say that environments have a kind of sharky factor, a sharkiness. So if journalism on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate as kind of 6 on the sharky scale, Hollywood was like 8, right? It's kind of getting up there. It was much worse. People had these enormous egos. And I saw all kinds of manipulative games, all kinds of Machiavellian maneuvers by people you would never suspect. And I'm not going to name names. I worked for several directors. They would appear to be so liberal, so warm, so understanding, but behind the scenes they were as mean as hell, and they knew how to get things done, and they could be very damn manipulative. Okay, so I'm not doing very well in Hollywood because I'm making all kinds of mistakes, and I don't really like playing that game. And so then I get invited to Italy for another job. My friend from university was involved in the starting of this new school that was going to be a media school. And it was going to change, revolutionize the world and the new media and computers and all that. So sure, I'll go there. Italy, you know, who wouldn't turn a job down in Italy? And once again, this is the land of Machiavelli, mind you. It was the most incredible environment. Nothing ever got done. Everybody was just sitting around drinking espresso, playing all these kind of backstabbing games, et cetera, et cetera. And so one day, there was a man there named Joost Elfers, basically the man who saved my life. Because, a little backstory, I'm 37 years old at this point, 38 years old. I've never held one job for more than 11 months. And my parents are starting to get a little bit worried about me. They're looking at, you know, maybe Robert's kind of a loser, you know. He started off so great and promising in college, but he's really not adding up to anything. So I'm kind of just, you know, I'm kind of depressed, et cetera. And I'm in Venice, Italy, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And this man, Joost Elfers, he's a book producer, a Dutchman. And he asked me if I had any ideas for a book. and suddenly spews out of me all of the stuff I'd been through, all the power games, all the suffering, all the mistakes, all the jobs I got fired from. And I said, look, power is this timeless phenomenon. People don't wear like Renaissance outfits and they don't carry little daggers under their cloaks to stab people, but they're still playing the same kind of political games as they played in the era of Cesare Borgia. It's less bloody. You don't get killed, you get fired instead of getting killed, but it's this timeless game. And I told him a few stories of history. He got so excited. He said, all right, I'll pay you to write this book and then we'll sell it. Okay? Now I'm going to write this book and I'm kind of a little bit intimidated because, first of all, I'm just this mid-level guy who's never had any success in life, really. I've had 60 different jobs. My wife and I once counted, I've had 60 different jobs in my life. And who am I to write a book on power? You know, what arrogance. How could I be the person to write a book about power? It's ridiculous, right? So I'm a little bit intimidated. And the other thing is, I'm not one for reading many self-help books, so I sort of checked out the self-help genre. And I was a little bit surprised that none of them described the reality of the work world. None of them went into the office politics, the kind of Dilbert-like world that people live in when you go into offices. None of them talked about it. It was this rosy, wonderful world of people cooperating and doing all sorts of wonderful things. Damn, that wasn't my experience. I don't want to write a book like that because that's not real. So my idea is I'm going to do all this incredible research. I'm going to read about what went on in ancient China and modern America. I'm going to cover every ethnicity, every group, every possible culture and time period. I'm going to find these timeless laws. So I write the book, and as far as I know, this book could be a flop, could be a terrible failure, because it's a weird book. If you've read it, it's very weird, it's very different. I have no idea. Okay, so it's up to the public, basically, to decide. And then the book comes out, and I remember I was in Washington, D.C. for the first book tour. And you can imagine, it's kind of a weird thing for me. I'm 39 at that point, never had any success, and suddenly I'm being interviewed on shows. I'm on the O'Reilly Factor, blah, 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 USA Today, back in the day when those things meant something. It was kind of like a drug trip. It was pretty amazing. And these people were coming up to me. I was at the Voice of America in Washington. This woman comes up to me and she's whispering, she goes, Robert, you described exactly the world of Washington, D.C. and all the politics, right? It's just like the world we go through. And then I had that experience again and again and again. Somebody coming up to me from the nonprofit world, somebody in television, people in entertainment, athletes in the NBA were telling me this. And then, I did a big book with 50 Cent. My book became very popular with hip-hop artists. He said, the music industry, which on that Sharkey scale is about 9.5, he was saying, Robert, you described exactly the world that I'm having to go through. So then I realized that I kind of maybe gotten it right in my own weird way, my own kind of fumbling, bumbling way. I got that book right, and so it left me with the confidence to keep on doing the kind of books that I do. So that's my long-winded answer to your question.
It's a great answer. Anytime you can include 50 Cent in your story, it makes it a great story.
I got a lot more 50 stories if you want.
I think I know the answer to this question, but it says your book has had a significant impact on readers in various fields. How do you feel about the fact that your work is often used by both those seeking to gain power and those seeking to protect themselves from manipulation?
Well, a book kind of reflects the person who wrote it, And so being somebody who was more the underdog in life, I was never the CEO, the powerful person in the executive suite. I was always the one in the little cubbyhole or wherever. So the book kind of, in some way, reflects my underdog spirit. And 95% of the laws have to do with protecting yourself from mistakes, quite honestly. The kinds of mistakes that I happen to have made personally. Law number 1, never outshine the master. I can tell you 3 times I violated the law before I wrote the book, right? I go into a job, and this was in television, I'm thinking, I'm a researcher. I'm going to get all the stories here. I'm going to be the best researcher they ever had. And they ended up firing me because I was basically making the boss insecure. I was doing the job better than she was doing it. So you violate these laws, you don't know why you did it, you don't know why you're fired, you don't know why you always say less than necessary, you talk too much and you said stupid things and it got you in trouble. What's going on here? So most of the laws are about defense, about how to protect yourself, about how to not do basic stupid things, kind of centered on human psychology, realizing the number one principle. Everybody you deal with in the work world has an ego, right? You don't think when you enter the work world that your boss has an ego. He or she is very powerful. They obviously are very competent. Why would they be insecure? But the boss is the most insecure person of them all, right? They don't really know. People are always saying how wonderful they are, but they don't feel secure. And so a lot of the problems you have are you don't understand that people have egos. So the book is basically a guide on how to not make mistakes. And it's been out now for 25 years. Over the course of those 25 years, I've received about tens of thousands of emails. Occasionally, I hear stories of one of those sharky type people who've used my book, and I feel a little bit sad about my contribution to somebody's pain. I don't feel good about that. But I can honestly say that 99% of the stories are about people like myself, who I kind of saved them from making all kinds of stupid mistakes. I also help them kind of understand some of the basic principles of how to play the power game, how to enter action with boldness and be bold when you decide to start a company, how to plan all the way to the end. So the manipulative laws, I have this belief that people who are really, really great manipulators, and we all know those people, we've all had to deal with them, they don't really need a book, It's kind of in their blood. And so I think the book mostly resonates with those people who are on the lower end of the totem pole like I was myself.
Fabulous answer.
And I think that kind of answers number 3 too. So I'm going to skip number 3. I think we've just checked that box.
All right.
All right, so question number 4. In your book, you draw lessons from historical figures to illustrate the laws of power. Are there any modern day examples of leaders or people who embody some of these laws?
Well, yes, obviously, but the problem is I read a lot of history. I spend most of my time with dead people, I'm afraid, right? People who lived hundreds of thousands of years ago. And over the course of 1,000 years, you can kind of judge whether someone was good at what they did because so much time has passed. Over the course of 100 years, yeah, okay, FDR, he was a pretty effective president. But when you get up to modern times, it's really difficult and very confusing. First of all, you have no perspective. Second of all, you bring your own kind of prejudices and preconceptions to the affair, So it's very hard to judge in the actual moment. So I was brought onto the board of directors of a publicly traded company about 15 years ago. About 15, 16 years ago, American Apparel. I don't know if you remember the 2000s and the golden era of the 2000s in American Apparel, that go-getting thing with its 80s shorts and all that. I was good friends with the CEO. The 48 Laws of Power was his Bible, right? Okay, he was a guy with some problems, obviously, as we know now. He brings me onto the board of directors, and when you look at him, he's very powerful, very charismatic. He created this incredible factory in Los Angeles that employed thousands of people. It was a thing of beauty to see somebody making a factory to make clothes here in America. A great story. So at first glance, yeah, Dov Charney, he's using the 48 Laws of Power. But then as I got closer and I watched him and I observed him day by day, I go, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's violating all of the laws. He doesn't know how to recreate himself. He doesn't know law number 46, or 47, one of the most important. In victory, know when to stop. He never knew when to stop. And, he had issues with women. He had a lot of sexual harassment cases. And so with some perspective and watching him up close, I could see that he had feet of clay, to use the expression, that he wasn't really what he appeared to be. And so, if I were to look at Elon Musk and go there, actually Elon Musk reminds me of Doug Charney in some ways. Kind of a raging narcissist who's very brilliant, who's a great entrepreneur in starting up companies, but is actually a terrible manager of people. If I saw him up close, I'd probably have a similar impression. Doug Charney would sleep and shower in the factory because he worked day and night. He couldn't delegate, which is a terrible quality in a leader, to not be able to delegate. He had to do everything himself. Well, that's what Elon Musk is doing. He's sleeping at Twitter. He's taking showers at X, So it's hard to have a perspective on some of these. I interviewed some people from my book, Mastery, people who I felt had mastered their subject. And I met a man named Paul Graham. I don't know if you've heard of him. A very, very brilliant tech entrepreneur. I would say he uses the laws of power. He's a definite master. He's very clever, and he's brilliant. And so I've met some people who I think would stand the test of time, but I don't know because I don't know them up close. You have to observe them day by day by day. There's an expression, no man is a hero to his valet, to his servant. So when people see you every day, if you saw me every day, you would suddenly see that I don't have the luster that I seem to have. People show their weaknesses and their flaws. So I think you need 50, 100, 1,000 years before you can really judge that.
Thank you. That's good to know.
I learned more about history in your books than I did in school, so thank you for that. In a world that values authenticity and transparency, how do you see the relevance of your work on power dynamics and manipulation in today's society?
Well, when I think of transparency and authenticity, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit because that might be the value, but I don't really see that actually in the reality because we live in the era of social media where people wear these incredible masks. They can be like all aggressive and troll-like and saying all kinds of nasty things, and then you meet them in person and they're this kind of shy person who's, not at all. You can play the social justice warrior, you can do all your virtue signaling on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. You can play these incredible roles. So where is this authenticity, I see a lot of people playing different roles. They're like actors, pretending to be something that they're not on social media. So, authenticity is a great thing when you see it in a leader, right? Somebody who kind of, you feel it in their body language, that they actually embody what they say. It's almost a nonverbal thing to see in a leader. And in my book, The Art of Seduction, I talk about people who have charisma, and we kind of feel their charisma. And a lot of charismatic people have that kind of authenticity to them. But there are not very many of them. And then when it comes to transparency, I don't know, I guess, you're going to all come away and think Robert Greene is one hell of a cynic. Okay, that's probably true, but I don't see a lot of transparency. I'm sorry. So my experience on the board of directors at American Apparel, it was all about playing to Wall Street, the quarterly report, massaging the numbers, making it good like the last quarter you had growth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there was no sense of where it was going, of what was really behind the numbers. People were really good at massaging it and creating the appearance. I think transparency within the company could be interesting and is a valuable thing, where you make it clear to the people who work for you that this is what's going on. And I'm a big believer, when I talk about leadership, I think one of the most important things to have is to have a high level, a lot of communication, so that things that are happening on the street level, on the ground level, the foot soldiers, so to speak, are giving you real-time information on what's happening, in the battlefield to the leader, so that you're not isolated. That's the kind of transparency I can see is very valuable. But a lot of times, these values are what people trumpet, but they're not really out there in the public, and they're not the reality. And in my book, The Laws of Human Nature, the last book I wrote, I kind of talk about the shadow side of human nature, the dark side of people. And I kind of explain how people who kind of try to show particular value, who try to show and make a display of it and are really good at it, they're incredibly masculine, they're incredibly aggressive, they're incredibly virtuous. They have something to hide. They're often hiding the opposite qualities because that's human nature. So I'm afraid that's my point of view on that, but you can take me apart on that, if you.
Well said. We'll go with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fake it on social media a lot. So, yeah, authenticity is key. But which leads us to our next question. The idea of power often raises ethical questions. How do you suggest balancing the pursuit of power with a sense of moral responsibility?
Well, it's important to be good and ethical. As I said, my father was a very decent man, and he appreciated the 48 Laws of Power when he came out. He passed away a few years afterwards. But he was like kind of going, whoa, Robert, what did you write here? But he was proud of his son. So, it's very good, I think, to have these values. I'm not going to knock them at all. But as a student of classics, the ancient Greeks had a belief that I adhered to very strongly. And they believed that what was worse than being bad or evil was being stupid. Stupidity caused more problems in the world than anybody who was dark or evil. Because when people are evil, you see it and you can confront it and you can fight against it. And it raises your anger and you can organize, etc. But when people are stupid and incompetent, you don't see what's coming. They pretend to be something else, and they cause a lot more problems. So I'm more of the side where I was going to write a book actually on the history of stupidity, and I ended up, because there's a lot of material, I'm sorry, but I ended up writing a book on warfare, which I covered a lot of those subjects. But my idea is, so, to me, one of the greatest American presidents that have ever lived, and everybody has their personal favorite. Certainly Abraham Lincoln's up there. But my personal favorite is FDR. Now, FDR was, I think, a very decent man. But he was incredibly Machiavellian. And one of the people who wrote probably the best biography of FDR was a guy named McGregor Burns. The title of his book was The Fox and the Lion, which is a phrase from Machiavelli that sometimes you need to be the fox and sometimes you need to be the lion. You need to be clever and crafty, and you need to roar and chew people up. You need to be able to be both. That was FDR. He was so clever. He knew how to create drama, how to create spectacles. He had a henchman. I forget the guy's name, I'm sorry, I think it's Harry Hopkins, who would do all the dirty work for him, so he never appeared to be doing anything dirty. He was very, very clever. I think he had high morals. I think he had good values, and he did great things. He led us through a depression. He led us through World War II. He created our social security system. He was a great president, but he was also he knew the hard game of power. I contrast that with somebody like Jimmy Carter. Now, I know we all have our own personal beliefs here, but growing up in the era of Jimmy Carter, I thought the guy was rather incompetent. I thought he wasn't a very good president. He was moral. You would never find a more moral guy, a more decent human being. He was a wonderful person. I would have a beer with him. I would be his best friend. But I don't think he played the power game very effectively. And so sometimes the moral people aren't really necessarily those who know how to play the tough side of the power game. And sometimes people who have a little bit of a Machiavellian streak, but who have decent values, like an FDR, I think they can be much more effective in those kind of roles. So that's sort of more my icon. Because honestly, this is a tough world out there. It's a competitive world. People can be difficult. You have to have a little bit of iron in your soul. You have to be willing to sometimes fire somebody. And firing people can be difficult. And sometimes you have to be a little tough in who you hire. You have to see through the charlatans. You have to see through the narcissists, etc. You have to be a little bit tough in this world. I know that's not everything. I know you also have to be gentle and empathetic, and I agree completely. But I think sometimes people who are too good often don't make the best leaders. I'm sorry to say that.
If you're listening to him tonight, I mean really listening, especially some of the younger audience, he will save you years of misery in the corporate environment. I work there, so everything you're saying, there's a lot of truth to that. And I'm sure Rachel saw that when she was at the big corporate company.
Completely agree. Yeah, definitely.
So,
And by the way, I love what you said earlier about the book, and it works when you're coming from a defensive position.
Yeah.
The other day, my daughter Elizabeth and I were going through it, and she's doing the dynamics of middle school, and we were seeing how we could apply some of the laws defensively.
Ooh, that's a little early to start with the laws of power in middle school. I guess so, why not?
she's a really bright kid.
Okay, I don't know about that, but all right.
So we've had an emphasis on the 48 Laws of Power book, and we do have a fair amount of young adults in the room. So I want to shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
And let's have a little bit of an emphasis for students and young adults. And so the first question is, many young readers of the 48 Laws of Power, maybe not that young, might be navigating their formative years and trying to find their place in the world. How can understanding power dynamics benefit them in building strong relationships and making wise decisions during this critical stage in their life?
Well, yeah, there are two things. I mean, I wrote 2 books that are relevant. I mean, I wrote a book called Mastery, which is really the book for people when you're leaving the university, because it's a book that's trying to tell you how to navigate your 20s in the best possible way. So I don't really do that in the 48 Laws of Power. But in the 48 Laws of Power, a lot of things in life, a lot of the good things in life are what you don't do, the mistakes you don't make, the bad relationships you avoid, that toxic person that you were going to have be your boyfriend or girlfriend, you don't get involved with them. If you go through a life avoiding the bad choices, you're going to have a pretty good life. You're not going to have so much drama. Your emotions aren't going to be continually pulled this way and that way. And making one mistake or having a bad boss that you can't get away from, and I've consulted with a lot of people who've had this scenario. I can't leave my job. I put in 15 years, but he's torturing me. He's harassing me. Nothing I ever do is correct, blah, 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 blah. That kind of situation can ruin you psychologically and mentally. So for young people, to me, it's about not making mistakes, right? And having a degree of self-control. So it's not easy being young in this world today because you're raised on social media. And it gives you some bad values, some bad ideas. And one thing you have to be aware of is you can't just say whatever is on your mind. You can't just think that being who you are and being natural and being, your normal self is going to get you very far. You have to be careful in this world. There's a question coming up about being paranoid. I'm not telling you to be paranoid. I'm just telling you to be self-aware, that the people around you have egos, that people are judging you based on what you say, about how you dress, about your style, about how you look, about the friends you associate with. You may not like it, but it's the reality. You have to understand some of these basic principles so that you don't go around making these painful mistakes. So law number 1, never outshine the master. The idea is very simple. Your boss, who you work for, and wherever you are, you're going to have a boss, even if it's only a company of 2 people. That person has an ego, has insecurities. And if you try too hard to impress him or her, if you show off too much, you probably are going to inadvertently trigger their insecurities. And I've talked to a lot of people who made this mistake, right? And they're gonna do weird things to you. They're not gonna say, "You made me feel insecure. You made me think that maybe you're after my job." Instead, they're going to fire you, or they're going to put you in a bad position. They're never going to tell you what exactly the reality is. And even a person as powerful as 50 Cent, you like my 50 Cent citations, he told me that the person who saved his life, basically, because, and I know the story very well because I wrote a book with him, was Eminem. He was just basically a guy doing mixtapes on the streets of Southside Queens. Eminem heard one of his mixtapes and goes, this guy's amazing, I'm going to sign him to a record deal. 50 realized that Eminem was his master. And I better make this guy feel good about himself. I'm never gonna he's always gonna be number one to me. I'm always gonna respect him. I'm never gonna inadvertently make him feel insecure. Even somebody as powerful as 50 Cent, who at that moment was on the cusp of greatness, he understood that you have to be careful with people, that they have egos. So I'm saying, look at the book and don't look at all the chapters. Don't read Crush Your Enemy Totally, please, okay? Don't read Pose as a Friend and Work as a Spy. Skip over those chapters, I beg you. But read the ones that kind of appeal, that show you, wow, always say less than necessary. Yeah, man, I talk too much. Or guard your reputation at all costs. Yeah, I've done some things, I've posted some things on Instagram that are gonna make me look horrible when I go for a job interview and my reputation's gonna suffer. Maybe I can't be so stupid like that. So that's my answer to your question.
It's a great start for our young adults. By the way, as a consultant, I had a client earlier this year. They hired me to consult and help. I outshone the master. Job lasted 1 month. I went home, I said, Sam, I don't think I should have gave him everything. It was too much for him. So it applies your whole life. Thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
So I'm going to go off book.
Shay, please.
All right.
Sure.
So of all the books that you've written so far, if someone hasn't read your books, should they read them in a particular order? Does anyone ever ask you that?
Yeah, they asked me that.
Okay.
Well, right now I have 7 books, and I really wouldn't advise reading all 7 of them because it'll give you a headache. But I would maybe, it depends on your situation. So if you're in your 20s and you don't know really where you want to go in life, you're a little bit confused about your career, about your future, I would highly recommend reading Mastery. A lot of young people have really, really benefited by that book because it teaches you how to find what I call your life's tasks, what you were meant to accomplish in life, how to go through an apprenticeship phase, how to find a good mentor in life, how to be, and how to become creative and a master in your field. If you're dealing with a lot of office politics and you're in one of those sharky environments, the 48 laws of power. If you're a salesman or you're in marketing or you're having relationship problems with finding the right man or woman in your life, The Art of Seduction, by all means, start with that book. The 33 Strategies of War is a good introduction to the idea of strategy itself. And when I was talking before about stupidity versus morality, strategy, a good strategist are the kind of people who get things done. They're the people who understand the laws of power. They're the people who are competent. And so in the 33 strategies I try to apply lessons from warfare, quite honestly, to daily life. And although, my wife, who doesn't like anything about warfare, she said it was the book that helped her the most because she works in Hollywood and she's a film director. And being a film director is like warfare. It's like a battle, it's like bullets flying everywhere, okay? She said it really helped her. So it depends. And the 50 Cent book is basically about if you're dealing with a lot of fear in life. I try to say, as I said, I do a lot of books about dead people, and finally I got a chance with 50 Cent to actually write a book about somebody alive. And my idea was, what is the source of 50 Cent's power? Like I did with Napoleon. And I decided 50 is fearless. And it's not a fearlessness where he's aggressive and he's going out there and taking bullets, etc. It's the fact that he doesn't really, in any kind of situation, he's not afraid to make decisions. He's not afraid to do the tough things. He's not afraid to to offend people sometimes. He's not afraid of battle. He's not afraid of death. He's not afraid of the public and his audience. And it gives him tremendous power. So if you're dealing with a lot of fear, finally, I will get to the laws of human nature, which is my last book, and it's kind of my favorite, I'm sorry to say that. It's the longest one. It's 560 pages long.
Very small type.
And small type. But it's the accumulation of everything I have learned in 25 years of consulting, of dealing with all kinds of people. And I'm getting at the root of what makes people so difficult and what makes your life so difficult. And I'm trying to explain that you need to be aware of human psychology and human nature. And so it's kind of like the ultimate, I would almost begin there if you can stand 560 pages. So it just depends on where you are in life.
That one book is bigger than my whole stack of books over there. So.
Sorry.
I'm honored to be in the same room as you. I often say I've paid the dummy tax so you don't have to in business. That's why I'm a coach, and David taught me that. But, I had a question that came to mind here from one of the young adults is, young readers may be more idealistic and optimistic about the world. How can the book's teachings on power and human behavior be balanced with the importance of empathy, compassion, cooperation in their relationships?
Well, I agree with 100%. And, I know I come across as being cynical, but the reason I come across as being cynical is I'm essentially the exact opposite. I'm a very idealistic and optimistic person, and it's what allows me to write the books that I do, and it's what allows me to get up in the morning. So when I say that people who have a certain exterior, like aggressive or masculine, they're hiding the opposite. My cynicism is hiding a core of actually being quite the opposite. And so I believe empathy is an incredibly important quality in life. And in the laws of human nature, I have a chapter on empathy, and I go into it deeply. And it's a subject that I'm dealing with in my new book that I'm currently writing right now. So I don't want people to think that life is just about playing games and manipulation and being good at power and bullshitting your way through life. I know I've been giving you that impression, and I'm very sorry if I have, because there is a whole other side to life. And my new book that I'm writing, 5 years ago, almost to a day, I came this close to dying. I had a stroke. I was driving my car in Los Angeles, and basically my wife saved my life. So I know, how you can leave you at any moment. So I'm writing a book kind of based on that, and based upon how insane it is to actually be alive, and how wonderful it is to be alive, and how I don't want young people to have this idea. And it's hard now with global warming and so much incompetence and so many boomers who are just absolutely the worst politicians. I understand why you could be very bitter about things. Believe me, I understand, so it's hard. But the book is basically, I'm writing a book on what I call the sublime. And it's basically how insane and wonderful it is to actually be alive, because believe me, I know it was very nearly taken away from me. So I'm not saying this to make you cry or get you to tear up or anything. It's just that there is another side. And I think it's very important for people to have ideals and to be optimistic and to enter the work world going, damn it, I think I could be a great writer, or I'm going to be an artist, or I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and to have excitement and energy. Because if you don't have energy and excitement, you're never going to get anywhere, right? Because life is really tough. There's so many obstacles in your path. There's so many people out there who don't want to help you. And your energy and your enthusiasm are what's going to carry you over the hill. Your love for what you do. carry you over the hill. And so you need to have that in the beginning. So please don't get the impression that it's all about these power games or anything like that, you know. It's every time I write a book, I have to get myself really excited about the subject. I have to feel it. I have to make it come alive. Because if I don't feel it, the reader won't feel it. And so you need to be that about your work and about the businesses that you were starting up. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. I kind of forgot. I kind of went on.
You answered it and then some. And that was my final question. I just wanted to thank you because I feel like I'm a smarter person, a more educated person, a more well-informed person, and I did better in business because of your work of art. So I want to thank you for that and your continued work and all the things that you're doing. And Rachel, I don't know if that was your last question or you got more, but
Yeah, that was my last question,
yeah.
too. I think that was a good place to end it, but I wondered, did you want to tell everybody about the special edition?
Okay, well, here, can you open this for me? It's a little bit pricey, I'm afraid to say, but this is the 25th anniversary of the 48 Laws of Power, and we've come out with a 25th anniversary version of it. It's leather bound, it's got this cool logo, and if you flip the sides of the pages, you see a picture of me and you see a picture of Machiavelli. One direction Machiavelli, the other picture me.
It comes out when
In November. And it's a little bit blasphemous because it looks like the Bible, I'm sorry to say. But that man I mentioned in Italy, who's a great designer who designed these books, he designed this and he's really brilliant. So, as I said, it's $100. But if you want a collector's item, because it's a limited edition, we're not going to be printing as many as we normally do. So that's all.
It'll be on time for Christmas.
Yeah.
And tonight, you get the book, and Robert can sign it for you. So we have these here too for tonight that you can buy.
Are they asking any questions or we're done?
Do you guys want to ask any questions? This is your good opportunity. Yes.
Well, it's kind of a weird story because he read the 48 Laws of Power early on, and it helped him a lot. He was a huge fan, and he wanted to meet me. And, you know, I'm this kind of nerdy white guy from middle class in LA. I was a little bit intimidated. I was a little bit worried about it, 50 Cent. And I fly to New York to meet him, and it's in the back room of the steakhouse. It's like something from The Godfather. And he's got his whole posse, his whole team of people that he works with, and I'm just by myself. And I sit next to him, and all I could do was stare at his bling. He had a bracelet, a diamond bracelet that, I don't know, must have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was insane. It was so beautiful. I was just staring at that and staring at his $100,000 watch. And his son, Marquise, was there, who also had incredible bling. Anyway, he was the nicest, sweetest, gentlest man. He was so smart and intelligent and sweet. I was totally caught off guard. And he was expecting this gruff, older Henry Kissinger guy. He was a little bit worried about meeting me. And here he meets me and he sees that I'm not at all like that. So we were both caught off guard, and we had this kind of nice rapport. He was going through a lot of beefs at the time, one with Greene, and I had just written my war book, in which we were discussing strategy. He was really good at strategy, and I go, damn it, Robert, you spend your life with dead people, you know, and I like hip hop, and I love the story of somebody who comes from the worst circumstances in America and who rises to his power. What a lesson, how incredible. If I could write how 50 did it together, collaborating, to bring two opposite worlds together, the middle-aged nerdy guy from LA and the crack dealer from the street of Southside Queens, what a story. So I got excited, and he loved the idea, and we worked together, and for 6 months, I hung out with him. I was attached to his side. I went with him to the VMA Awards in Vegas, got to see him and Kanye duke it out. I went to parties with Floyd Mayweather Jr. I went to his house, his Mike Tyson house in Connecticut. I saw him in action. It was like a drug trip. It was amazing. I had a great time, and we wrote the book together, and we're still friends. We want to collaborate on a television version of the 48 Laws of Power. We've been working on that. So I still talk to him every few months or so. He's amazing. I really admire him, and he's so much not what you think he is. He's a really smart guy.
Let's do one more question, then we'll break this thing up. Anybody else out there has a question for Robert?
How do you define charisma and intelligence?
Define what?
Charisma
Charisma?
and intelligence.
Intelligence.
And intelligence.
Okay. Wow, easy questions. Well, in the Art of Seduction, I discuss charisma, and I go into it in quite great depths, and I talk about people like Marilyn Monroe and Malcolm X and John F. Kennedy, people I thought had tremendous charisma. And what I decided is charisma is like an inner light that somebody has. They feel such a charge, such conviction. They have a deep emotional resonance. They're so excited about something. And that inner light animates their gestures. It animates their speaking. It animates their nonverbal communication. It makes them come to life in their nonverbal communication. It's very powerful, right? So when Malcolm X spoke, he was one of the most charismatic leaders. He had spent so many years in prison. He had suffered so greatly. He felt so deeply about the fate of African Americans in the United States that when he spoke, it's just his whole body was alive. And when we see people like that, it catches us up. We want to be around them. 50 Cent had incredible charisma. And what 50 Cent's charisma came from was the fact that he was shot 9 times at this range, bullets passing through his face. He came even closer to death than I did. You know, he suffered a lot more. And when you come that close to death, nothing else matters in life. And that kind of fearless quality that I mentioned, it just lit him up. And when you're around charismatic people, it's usually a confidence. It makes you feel confident. It gives you energy. And he had that effect on me. So that's kind of how I define charisma. And intelligence, you know, my old age, that intelligence is more of an emotional quality than an intellectual quality. Because you don't know the Socratic method was, I know that I don't know, was what Socrates taught. The ability to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning. A degree of humility. That's an emotional quality, a flexibility that I think can make somebody intelligent. It allows you to learn from your mistakes. It allows you to learn from your failures. There are people out there who've got degrees from MIT and Harvard. They could wipe me off the planet. They're so much smarter. They've got incredible IQs, but they lack that emotional quality. They face one failure in life, their startup fails, and they just melt like toilet paper or something. They're gone, right? They have no toughness inside. Intelligence is an emotional quality. It's the ability to admit you're wrong. It's the ability to learn from mistakes. And it's the ability to be flexible in life and say, what worked yesterday won't necessarily work tomorrow. So that's my quick way of answering a very complicated question.
I think that was great. Thank you for all of that.
Let's give him a round of applause.